If you are holding Iraqi dinar, Vietnamese dong, or Venezuelan Bolívar, you need to pay close attention to what is happening right now. Because once again, the internet is exploding with claims that a major currency revaluation could happen overnight. The Iraqi dinar is at the center of the latest speculation. Vietnamese dong holders are watching closely, and Venezuelan Bolívar holders are also seeing major currency headlines. But here is the question that matters most. Has the Iraqi dinar actually been revalued overnight? Is there really a new rate? And could millions of dong and Bolívar holders suddenly see a completely different value? Today, we are going to separate the confirmed information from the rumors, look at the latest developments, and explain what currency holders should actually be watching. So stay until the end, because the most important part of this story is not a social media screenshot or a rumored exchange rate. It is what governments and central banks are actually doing. Let's start with Iraq. For years, Iraqi dinar holders have followed every major economic announcement looking for one specific event, a revaluation of the dinar against the US dollar. The latest wave of excitement comes from reports that Iraq is considering major currency and monetary reforms. There have also been reports about changing the structure of the Iraqi currency and potentially removing zeros from banknotes. One recent report said an Iraqi government official described the redenomination process as finalized, including a proposal involving the removal of 3 zeros. That sounds enormous, but there is a very important distinction. Removing zeros from a currency is not automatically the same thing as making every existing dinar suddenly worth several dollars. These are two different monetary concepts. A redenomination changes the numerical units used to express prices and balances. A true revaluation changes the currency's value relative to other currencies. And confusing these two concepts is one of the biggest reasons currency rumors spread so quickly online. There is another important development. Reports from July said Iraq's Prime Minister's financial advisor confirmed that the government had a plan involving an increase in non-oil revenues and a revaluation of the Iraqi dinar exchange rate as part of broader economic reforms. That is certainly something currency watchers should monitor. But it still does not mean that a new overnight rate has officially been activated. And that distinction is extremely important. Because there is a massive difference between saying, Iraq has a plan to change the exchange rate, and saying, Iraq changed the exchange rate last night. The first can be supported by reports. The second requires an actual official announcement and an observable new exchange rate. So if you see a headline claiming that the Iraqi dinar has already jumped to $3, $4, $6, or even higher, don't immediately assume it is official. Look for the source. Look for the Central Bank of Iraq. Look for an official government document. And most importantly, look for the actual exchange rate being used by banks and financial institutions. That is where the real confirmation would come from. Now let's talk about the Vietnamese dong. The dong is another currency that has developed a huge following among currency speculators. Online communities have circulated revaluation theories for years, including claims that the Vietnamese dong could suddenly become worth dramatically more against the US dollar. And whenever Iraqi dinar rumors start accelerating, Vietnamese dong discussions often accelerate at exactly the same time. But there is currently no credible evidence that millions of Vietnamese dong have suddenly been converted into a dramatically higher dollar value overnight. The normal market value remains the key reference point. In other words, owning 1 million dong does not automatically mean that 1 million dong will suddenly become worth millions of dollars because of an internet rumor. Any major change would require an official monetary decision, and it would eventually become visible through exchange rate systems. This is why currency holders need to understand the difference between a potential future reform and an already completed revaluation. A potential reform can take months or even years. An overnight revaluation, if it actually happened, would be a very different event. Now let's move to the Venezuelan Bolívar. This one is particularly interesting because Venezuela has experienced enormous monetary instability over the years. And recent reports have raised questions about the future of the Bolívar itself. Some analysts have even discussed the possibility of Venezuela moving further toward dollarization. That is important because dollarization is not the same thing as a traditional currency revaluation. If a country abandons or reduces the role of its domestic currency and moves toward the US dollar, that is a structural monetary change. It doesn't mean that every old banknote suddenly becomes worth a huge amount of money. And current market data shows just how different the Venezuelan situation is. As of August 27, 2026, the USD-VES exchange rate was around 786 bolivars per US dollar, according to current market data. That is not evidence of an overnight appreciation of the Bolívar. In fact, it demonstrates why headlines need to be examined carefully. The word, revaluation, can mean very different things depending on the context. A government can redenominate a currency. A central bank can adjust an official exchange rate. A currency can appreciate naturally in the market. A country can dollarize. And none of these automatically means that holders of old currency notes become overnight millionaires. Now, here's where this story gets really interesting. Why are so many people talking about an overnight RV right now? One reason is that Iraq is going through important economic discussions. The country's dependence on oil revenues, efforts to increase non-oil revenue, banking reforms, currency management, and discussions about the future exchange rate structure are all creating an environment where currency watchers are paying very close attention. Another reason is the huge amount of speculation surrounding the Iraqi dinar online. Every government statement can become a viral headline. Every banking screenshot can become a leak. Every unusual exchange rate display can become evidence of an alleged RV. But professional currency analysis works differently. You don't confirm a currency revaluation from a screenshot. You don't confirm it from a YouTube video. You don't confirm it because somebody claims that a bank employee saw a new rate. You confirm it through authoritative monetary and financial sources. That is the standard currency holders should use. And there is another major warning. If someone is telling you that the RV is absolutely guaranteed tonight and is asking you to send money, purchase a special package, buy access to a redemption center list, or pay a fee to receive a supposedly secret exchange rate, stop. Do not send money simply because someone says the revaluation is confirmed. A genuine monetary reform does not require you to pay an internet personality for access to the new value of your currency. Now let's come back to the Iraqi dinar. Could Iraq eventually change its exchange rate policy? Yes. Is Iraq discussing economic and currency reforms? There are credible reports pointing in that direction. Could the Iraqi government eventually introduce a different exchange rate framework? That is possible, but is there verified evidence today that the Iraqi dinar suddenly became worth several US dollars overnight? That is a completely different claim. And at this point, that claim should be treated as speculation unless an official announcement confirms it. This is actually good news for serious currency watchers. Why? Because instead of chasing every rumor, you can focus on the signals that really matter. Signal number 1. Watch the Central Bank of Iraq. Signal number 2. Watch official Iraqi government statements. Signal number 3. Watch published exchange rates. Signal number 4. Watch banking and monetary reforms. Signal number 5. Watch whether Iraq actually implements a new exchange rate mechanism. And signal number 6. Watch what happens to the existing currency notes if a redenomination or currency replacement is introduced. These developments would tell us much more than a viral screenshot ever could. Now imagine that Iraq really did announce a major exchange rate change. What would happen? Banks would need to update their systems. Currency dealers would need to adjust their rates. Financial institutions would receive instructions. Official exchange rate publications would change. And eventually, international currency data would reflect the new rate. That is why a genuine overnight revaluation would be extremely difficult to hide. There would be a trail. There would be official documentation. There would be financial market consequences. And there would be widespread reporting from credible financial institutions. So if you are watching this video and you currently hold Iraqi dinar, Vietnamese dong, or Venezuelan Bolívar, don't panic if you haven't seen a new rate on your bank account. And don't celebrate based only on a social media post. Wait for confirmation. Now let's look at the phrase, millions of dong. This phrase is often used because the numbers sound enormous. For example, someone might say they own 10 million Vietnamese dong. That sounds like a massive amount. But currency denomination and currency value are two different things. A currency can have a large numerical denomination while still having a relatively low value against the US dollar. So don't judge your potential wealth simply by the number printed on the banknotes. The same principle applies to Iraqi dinar and Venezuelan Bolívar. Large numbers do not automatically mean large purchasing power. The exchange rate determines the international value. And that brings us to the biggest question of today's video. Could we be approaching a major currency event? The honest answer is that there are developments worth watching, especially in Iraq. There are reports of monetary reform discussions. There are reports concerning potential currency restructuring. And there is growing attention around Iraq's future exchange rate policy. But, worth watching, is not the same as confirmed overnight. That distinction protects you from misinformation. If Iraq eventually announces a real revaluation, the story will become much bigger than YouTube speculation. We would expect official statements. We would expect updated exchange rate information. We would expect banks and financial institutions to react. And we would expect international financial markets to notice. Until those things happen, treat specific overnight rates as unverified claims. The same applies to the Vietnamese dong. And the same applies to the Venezuelan Bolívar. There is a huge difference between a currency being discussed as a potential future reform candidate and a currency actually receiving a new official valuation. So today's biggest alert is not simply RV confirmed. The bigger alert is, watch the official signals. Because if a genuine currency transformation is coming, the strongest evidence will eventually appear where it cannot easily be hidden. In official documents, in central bank announcements, in exchange rate systems, and in the banking sector. Until then, don't let an exciting headline make the decision for you. Do your own research, check the source, check the date, check the official exchange rate, and most importantly, don't send money to anyone promising secret access to an RV. The Iraqi dinar story is still developing. The Vietnamese dong remains heavily watched by currency communities. And Venezuela's monetary future continues to generate major debate. But as of today, the claim that all three currencies have suddenly experienced a confirmed overnight revaluation should be treated with caution. If a genuine official announcement appears, that would be a completely different story. And that is exactly the kind of development we will be watching. So keep your eyes on the official sources, not just the rumors. Because in the currency world, the difference between possible, planned, rumored, and officially implemented can mean everything. This is RV News 2026. Stay informed, stay cautious, and never confuse a viral claim with a confirmed monetary event.